Hey folks, welcome to the video. We're going to very quickly cover the 5 major things that you need to know about low-grade narcissism and low-grade narcissists. Number 1, when we're talking about low-grade narcissism and low-grade narcissists, we're in a non-clinical area. We're outside the realm of mainstream psychiatry here. This is still useful though. It's useful to have definitions that help people to understand what they're dealing with. Not everybody's writing their master's thesis in psychoanalytic theory or trying to do a PhD in personality disorders. I get that, it's fine. But the first thing I want to say to you, because I believe it's very important, is when you're talking about low-grade narcissism and low-grade narcissists, you're not talking about narcissistic personality disorder, and it's very important to make that distinction for the reason I'm about to give you. When we're talking about narcissistic personality disorder, we're talking about a person who's been through so much pain and so much trauma in their childhood of a unique and particular style that we'll cover in a moment, that their only response has been to detach from reality. Narcissistic personality disorder is a disorder of delusion. It's a kind of psychotic break from reality. It's a psychosis. Why do I say that? Because the narcissist has said no to life, no to what life has offered them as a child. Denial, no. And they've created a shell. And inside of that shell, they can remain protected, safe, they incorrectly believe, because they're actually rotting and atrophying inside of that shell with no real attachment and no authenticity. But it feels safe to them. It's all they've ever known. Outside of that shell is the real world, and it's always hostile. It's always considered hostile, even if it's not hostile, even if it's full of loving family members and pleasant co-workers, it's still hostile, which is why they're hypervigilant and which is why they suffer from ideas of reference and they get paranoid because they think everybody's talking about them because they have a hostile worldview. That's narcissistic personality disorder. It requires a shell of denial. Inside of the shell, they view themselves as though in Perseus's shield, but it's a distorted vision of themselves, and it's the narcissistic false self. They're seeing themselves in a hyper-idealized way so that they don't have to deal with a painful reality that would be beyond endurance for them. When we're talking low-grade narcissism, low-grade narcissists, we're not talking psychiatry. We're not interested in clinical terms here. What we're doing is we're saying, hey, I don't think this person has full-blown narcissistic personality disorder. They're not trapped inside of a delusional psychotic shell of their own wonderfulness, but they have some pretty nasty traits, and it is worth saying that. Why is this so important? Why have we put this at number 1? Because at a certain point, we cross the Rubicon of hope. If somebody's here and they're basically lost inside of their narcissistic shell, their narcissistic self-image, therapy is not going to work. There's no intervention. There's no threats you can make, begging you can do, songs you can write, or gestures you can give them that is going to convince them that their way of being in the world is wrong. This is like a survival mode for them. It's like, I must do this or I will not survive in reality. They're not consciously thinking that as adults, but the way that this personality, this rigid, it's marked by rigidity, this rigid personality disorder is structured in their childhood, was from a perspective of feeling like if they didn't do this, their lives would be over and they wouldn't survive. Number 2, you need to understand that when we're talking about low-grade narcissism, there's 2 things we're probably talking about. I'll use the more sort of academic and clinical definitions, and then we'll come back to just making it nice and simple. So there's 2 things that we're probably talking about when you say that person has low-grade narcissism, or you think, oh, I wonder if that person is a low-grade narcissist. What that means is that you're seeing somebody with highly pronounced narcissistic traits, not full-blown inside the shell narcissistic personality disorder, and or you're seeing a highly narcissistic interrelational style. So what does this mean? We all have latent narcissistic traits. When we're threatened, especially when the ego is threatened, as the ego is sort of set up as a defense to reality in and of itself, we already have latent narcissism within us. It's likely that the defenses that we come to, especially when we're enraged or we feel offended or indignant, are going to be narcissistic. So that person that you're talking about there, they're like that a lot of the time. So you're saying, wow, they really have some pronounced narcissistic traits that are there all the time. Narcissistic traits like what? Everybody, if you're wondering how to figure this out and crack the code because somebody in your life has got you watching YouTube videos like this, Go now to your favorite search engine and look up the 9 traits of narcissism. So this means that in a clinical setting, according to the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual as set out and used by the American Psychiatric Association, what we're looking for are 9, they're sadly equally weighted traits, which I think is a mistake, but we'll leave that for another video, 9 traits. And if a clinician finds 6 of those 9 traits in a person, they'll say that person has clinical narcissistic personality disorder. They'll have a clinical diagnosis of narcissistic personality disorder. So you're looking for traits like exploitativeness, interpersonal exploitativeness. They become bullying. They're very attached to ideas of themselves that are grandiose. They have ideas of themselves that are just not based in reality. They're kind of false. They clearly believe that they deserve special treatment. They can get nasty and angry and vicious if they're challenged, so on and so forth. So those are highly narcissistic traits. What's a highly narcissistic interrelational style, I hear you ask, which is the other way where you might be saying that's low-grade narcissism. So in psychology, when we say style, we don't mean whether a person is stylish or not. We mean their MO. So most people watch like detective shows and police procedural shows that are extremely popular now. The MO, you will know, is Latin. It's modus operandi, and it means the mode of operating in the world. That's a style in psychology. So in psychology, your style is your way of getting things done. So somebody with a highly narcissistic interrelational style, what you'll probably find, if they're doing that with absolutely everybody, then you'd be like, wow, that's classic grandiose narcissism. That is just a person with NPD, possibly also something of a psychopath as well. If it's with a few people, it's selective, it's just with 1 or 2 people, then we would say, that's a highly narcissistic interrelational style, but only in the context of that relationship. What is it about that relationship that means that they feel they need to do that? And that is where we start to say this is low-grade narcissism, highly pronounced narcissistic traits and a highly narcissistic interrelational style. The third thing you need to understand is there is something, it's not universally agreed upon, but it does exist out there by, supported by people with PhDs and people who are clinicians with peer-reviewed papers writing in this field, called context-specific narcissism. So perhaps during a period of grief, perhaps where somebody's fame and success has suddenly exploded, perhaps in a relationship with a certain individual for whatever reason, whatever the trigger is there, who knows, you would need somebody to look at that to really sort of be able to penetrate it and undo it. Maybe in their work, maybe they're fine in every area of their life, but in their work, they're highly narcissistic. You can have context-specific narcissism, and that could be one of the factors that is impacting your idea that this person has low-grade narcissism, which I presume you're saying that because you're looking at them and going, wow, they're really narcissistic sometimes, but not everywhere all the time. And I don't think that this is full-blown narcissistic personality disorder. The fourth thing that you need to understand is that this is a complex post-traumatic stress response. Narcissism is born of stress. It's a response to trauma, and it's defensive. It's defensive. So let's deal with the CPTSD part of this first. This person has been raised in an environment that's caused them to develop a certain mode for survival. It's fantasy-based. They're delusional. They're in their delusion that they're grandiose and they're wonderful, and so on and so forth. By the CPTSD model, the first person I ever heard suggest this, by the way, is Professor Sam Vaknin, so I highly suggest you check out his videos. By the CPTSD model, as laid out by Pete Walker, you will have 4 responses to stress and to threat. You will have fight, which is where you attack the threat. Flight, you run away from the threat. You freeze, which means that you freeze in the face of the threat, perceived or real, or the stress in your life. And then Pete Walker suggested another one, a 4th thing called fawning. So you have fight, flight, freeze. Everybody knew that. Then Pete Walker suggested fawning. Fawning is supplication, it's submission, it's a negotiation, it's a this for that, it's please don't eat me, I'll give you this instead. It's what codependents do. It's what people with people pleaser syndrome do an awful lot of. But the narcissist also has elements of codependency and is rooted in complex post-traumatic stress disorder. So if you're trying to create this rigid black and white binary, like you have the victims of narcissistic abuse, they're codependents who have CPTSD, and the narcissists, they're like vampires and witches who fly through the sky by the light of the full moon. you might want to review that way of looking at the world, because it's a little bit more complicated than that. They absolutely are human beings. They absolutely are wounded human beings. However, I just said you can cross the Rubicon of hope. There are some people who there is no hope for therapeutically. Some people don't like that. They're like, there's hope for everybody. Who knows, man? Maybe if with the right amount of psychedelics, chanting, meditation, and take them off to another environment and reparent them, maybe with enough resources. But in normal therapeutic practice, where you consensually phone a therapist and say, can I see you at Thursday at 3 o'clock? And then you go and you speak to them for a brief period of time. No, it's not gonna work. It's not immersive enough. Narcissistic personality disorder was created in a highly immersive environment, and I think it would require a highly immersive environment in order to undo it. So it's a CPTSD response of the fight fawn kind. So they're primary fight, secondary fawn, which means they're charming, they submit, they can supplicate if they need to, but you'll see that less. You don't see that very much, but it is there. So they can be pro-social, they can be charming, they can be nice, they can be very generous and very, very giving as well. The fifth thing that you need to understand about low-grade narcissism is that this narcissism, whether it's low-grade, which is going to take place on a spectrum, whereas narcissistic personality disorder, either the person has formed a hard shell that they exist inside of or not. Not everybody agrees with that model, by the way. Some people do, some people don't. I happen to. Doesn't matter if you don't, I don't mind. Outside here is the spectrum. Outside here is more of a binary situation. It's all compensatory. It's all compensatory. Now, what are they compensating for? They're compensating for deep-seated feelings of shame. Shame? I thought they were egomaniacs. I thought they were full of themselves. No, that's the false self that they project outwards, that they're egomaniacs and that they're completely full of themselves. Actually, structurally speaking, again, credit to Sam Vaknin to this one, there isn't really an ego there at all, because there's no ego boundaries. There is a superego, which is the ultra, in the case of the narcissist, because of the childhood trauma, ultra judgmental, ultra ferocious outer critic that is constantly criticizing and looking at other people to see what they're doing wrong or to see how they're attacking me, and there's this paranoid, aggressive, persecutory stance that they adopt. But there's really no ego there at all. There's the semblance of one, there's the projection of one, but they're not full of themselves. Why? Very briefly, because usually, this is my hypothesis, and it is backed in the literature, it's not some like weird left field theory, that one of the ways that we can think about the way a narcissistic personality disorder person is raised is in between two pillars, and these pillars represent two polar opposites. One of the polarities is telling them they're wonderful, they're amazing, and they're angelic. Nothing they do can be wrong because they're always right, because they're superhuman, suprahuman and superhuman. The other polarity says you're worthless, you're scum, you're not even human, you're less than human, you're a degenerate, you're a wretch. They were raised in an environment, I hypothesize, I'm claiming, that either people or the environment itself gave them these two conflicting messages. One, you're awful, terrible, and it goes down, down, down no matter what. The persecutory superego inner critic to them is telling them you're worthless, you're scum, you're useless, you're a fake, you're a fraud, nobody likes you. So they become compensatory, both in response to any external threat that is there that happens to come up. But if there's no external threat there, sadly, they make threats up. They have paranoid ideation. They have ideas of reference. They just imagine that people are plotting against them because it supports the structure of the personality itself. What is this thing that goes up? That's the false self. So both are delusional. No child is worthless and scum, and no child is wonderful and angelic. They're just children. They're just human beings. But this is the message they received. They're trying to get away from the feelings of shame and helplessness by surging upward towards this angelic, supernatural state of being better than the best, ultra pure, ultra good, something wonderful, something beyond and risen above the rest of these disgusting human beings, either through being exceptionally good looking, very funny, very powerful, very smart, and so on and so forth. These are people who seek to leverage their exceptionality as a means of dominating lesser human beings in the environment so that they can enjoy this not horizontal or equal interpersonal relationship, but a vertical interpersonal relationship. That's the fifth thing. What I want to say about this is, if you're watching a video like this, presumably you want help and you want some assistance and you'd like to know what to do next. So here's a little test for you. Be very careful of the power dynamics in your individual relationship with this human being. I don't want to get you fired. I don't want to get you divorced. I don't, it's just a YouTube video. Proceed at your own caution. Proceed with caution and at your own risk. Be smart, be adult, do the right thing for yourself. Don't make major life choices on the basis of a YouTube video. That isn't smart or adult. What I would suggest you do, having considered everything that I just said, is consider confronting them and saying, hey, because you're saying you think it's just low-grade narcissism, not a full-blown narcissistic personality disorder, here's the test. Hey, I've noticed that in the context of this, or with this person, or when you're doing this job, you really change. I like you, I respect you, and you're a good person, but I can see that this is going to be costly for you across time. Can I tell you some of the things that I've seen you doing consistently time and again that I don't like, that the people around you don't like, and that I think is really going to put people off and give them the wrong impression of who you are? Because I believe you are a good person, a nice person, I value you, but people are going to get the wrong idea about you. Do you mind if I just tell you some of the things I've noticed you doing? If they're open to that, then there's cause for optimism. They could go to therapy. They could take an intervention. They can take that external feedback. If they fly into a rage, or they go into total denial and then punish you for saying that afterwards, then your idea that you're dealing with low-grade narcissism should be called into question, and you must consider the possibility that you're actually, unfortunately, looking at full-blown malignant narcissistic personality disorder, especially if the rage they fly into is completely disproportionate. Why would they fly into a narcissistic rage? Because you just attacked the false self. That's their life buoy. That's the thing they're clinging onto, like Rose at the end of the Titanic, that she wouldn't let Leo get onto, even though there was plenty of room on that door, for dear life, believing if I let Leo on, or if I let anybody take this away from me, I will die. So they cling to it. So when they defend with emotional violence. They're extraordinarily aggressive, and they're very vindictive. It will go on for way longer than it needs to. And that's about all I have to say about that. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your time and your attention. I hope that you enjoyed this video on low-grade narcissism. If you would like, you can have my free e-manual by signing up here. Please like and subscribe to the channel, and I look forward to seeing you again very, very soon. Thank you. Okay, folks, the new course, Unplug from the Matrix of Narcissistic Abuse, is out now, and if you're interested in finding out more about that, please click the link below.